This is episode 3 of the Wax Matrix podcast, a Terry Kath vinyl experience. This is a 3-part series where we explore the art of record collecting through the collection of my dad, Terry Kath, who is the lead guitarist of the band Chicago. Each episode explores a different aspect of vinyl through various genres of my dad's music. Part 3 is titled The Jacket, which was simply what the record went into, just basically to protect it originally, but it quickly became a branding tool. So colors, fonts to catch the eye so that someone would want to buy it, and eventually became a way to really like define an album. You know, you remember a lot of things through their branding now. In this episode, we delve into the beauty and fascination of album art through Terry's extensive jazz collection, which is the largest genre in his collection and probably the most influential at the time that these records came out and when he was listening to them. So not what led him into Chicago's era, so not what he was listening to as a teen, but what he was listening to in the 70s while he was in the band Chicago. I'm Michelle Sinclair. I'm a DJ, Terry Kath's daughter, electronic music producer, and the curator of this collection. And with me, I have my two guests, Sweatson Klank, a.k.a. Tom Wilson, who is not only a record collector, but a fantastic producer, and my teacher from Point Blank Music School who taught me how to use Ableton and make beats. So round of applause.
Thank you for having me.
And also Ray Limon, a owner of High Fidelity Record Shop in the West Adams district of Los Angeles. I'm assuming you've been collecting records since your teens, and that's what led you to own a store.
It definitely did.
And also, when I got your bio, I saw you were part of Hit and Run.
Yeah, Hit and Run, the live screen printing collective based here in Los Angeles.
Which, if you went to any parties around a certain time in LA, you have some Hit and Run t-shirts in your closet.
Yes.
Like I do.
Especially around the dub lab community
yes.
and the art community in general.
Yeah, I loved Hit and Run. That was. Is
thanks.
it still running?
It's still running, yeah. You know, they're on to bigger, kind of more corporate style events,
okay.
You know, that's paying the bills.
Fair enough.
There's not as much time for the fun local get-togethers.
Underground parties.
Yeah, but, you know, we still support, you know, the people we've supported from day one.
Sick. Okay, so quick question. How'd you guys meet? Because you introduced me to Ray. You guys have a history connection that relates to records, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. Ray and I met at a record store in Los Angeles that's no longer there, but was a very historic place called Aaron's Records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Aaron's was a Los Angeles staple as far as record store goes. It was a big community space as well in the sense that musicians, DJs would gather there daily and, you know, discuss music, talk about new records coming out, what they were finding, both DJs, music producers, and just music lovers all around. So I met Ray there, and we were both quite young.
Working there, or just because you guys were there looking for records?
I was working there, and I met Tom over there, and shortly after he began working there. And
it was like the place where, like, look, as a kid who was like just really getting into collecting records, there was no better place to work because
right.
and it was hard to get a job there. It was like the cool spot. Like if you could get a job at Aaron's, you were like, you're in the cool kids crowd. And also you could collect records. You would have first dibs like before they hit the floor at the store.
It's like a fashion lover working at their favorite clothing store.
It really was.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was, you know, lots of stuff came through. Lots of people came through. It was the pre-digital era, so you only had records, you know. And if you were a DJ, you know, playing whatever spot in Hollywood, you had to come and get the newest records. So these people would be here daily, you know.
That's right.
You know, labels like Stone's Throw, guys like Madlib, Peanut Butter Wolf, J-Rock, J Dilla would come in, you know, almost daily or every other day.
Yeah.
And then guys like Quentin Tarantino and Biz Markie and Morrissey would be in there.
Keith, Morrissey.
So you helped them buy records?
You know, some people we helped. Those people kind of knew what they wanted. Yeah.
But you sold them records.
We definitely sold them
you
records.
helped to grow their record collection.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, also radio DJs who were on big radio stations in LA would come through and be looking for things. We'd help them find them. We also dealt with, of course, a lot of major labels because the major labels would want their singles and their records to be in the store on release day. So we had this whole train of people bringing in promos, and there was, I mean, the amount of records that would go through that place in a day, it's hard to imagine today in a digital world, but back then, you know, vinyl was a currency, and the amount of music and sales that were happening on a daily basis, it was unreal. Like, people would leave with stacks this big daily, multiple people, and we would just sell records nonstop to the point where, like, the owner, oftentimes, if we ran out of a title that was popular, right, let's call it in today's world like Adele or something, if it was release week and you're the buyer, right? I was a buyer for electronic, for the electronic and like house and techno section. Okay, so let's say it's release week for Adele, and I only ordered 50 copies, thinking, I don't think it's gonna really be a hit. And then those 50 copies like sell out within the first couple hours of the shop being open on release day. The boss would like call you in and be like, "What the hell are you doing? You only ordered 50 copies. Yeah. We're screwed. We're not. This could be money that we could be making, you know." So like, I think it's crazy to think about music in that way.
And then the opposite, if you ordered too much and it doesn't sell.
Exactly. If you ordered too much and it didn't sell, you also got shit.
Dang.
So,
yeah, I miss those days. I don't DJ on vinyl anymore, so it's sad. In a way.
You know, as long as the music's good, it doesn't matter where it comes from.
As long as the music's good. Well, I have a quick question, if you can tell it quickly, because then we'll move on to the meat and potatoes that everyone wants to get into. If you could share just a moment that was an epic find for you in your record collection that is kind of memorable, I can share mine really quick. I used to have a neighbor, and every Sunday he would blast music, and he would just piss off the whole neighborhood because he would be playing it so loud. It was always 70s rock. But he was also like a recluse. I imagined him just being this hoarder. He was an older guy, like in his 70s. And one day he passed away. He overdosed in his house. And the neighbors came and got me, and they were like, "Michelle, just take this record collection. We don't know what to do with it." And I had been hearing his music, and he'd always talk about music. So I was like, okay, thinking I'm walking into this like hoarder house. We go in. It's a hoarder house of records. It's like no furniture, no place to sit, just records lined along all the walls. But it was trashy in there. I mean, there was like rat poop everywhere. It was dusty, dirty, and like obviously he had been using drugs. So my friend looks at me and is like, "You got to get these records out of here now." So we just like grabbed everything, took them. We're like wiping them off. But it was an epic find, from everything from psychedelic garage rock from the 60s all the way to the 80s. Like stuff I did not have. And just like to this day, it's a go-to collection for me. And I like epic find.
yeah. How many records were there?
It was hundreds. There was hundreds of it was a lot. It was his lifetime of music in there. It was score. So
That's the best.
Yeah. Let's see, epic find all time or while working at Aaron's. I guess I was working at Aaron's during this time, but it was not at the record store. It was at the Fairfax swap meet, which was a lot different back then. This guy just showed up with maybe 40, 50 boxes of records, and they were all $1 each. And, you know, I walked or was on the bus back then, so I didn't have a car. So my buddy lived 2 blocks away, so I bought as many records as I could carry for $1 each. Guy had Funkadelic, Pink Floyd.
amazing.
All these jazz, Blue Notes, and I carried a big stack, as much as I could carry to my buddy's house. I told my buddy, "Yo, this guy's selling all these records for $1. Let's go buy them." So left the stack. We went back, carried another big stack to his house, and must have spent like $60, $80 on records that are some of the finest records of my collection today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Stories like that. Just they may, as a record collector, digger, like when you hear stories like that, you're just like, I need to go out and like I need to find someone like that. I need to find myself at a swap meet and just stumble upon a box of like you start dreaming big.
Well, because usually $1 record you'll find at like the Goodwill or something, or those thrift stores, and you're like,
by the way,
is $1.
they're not $1 anymore.
I
dude.
know.
Like,
That was a time, by the way, when things were $1. I have my Eazy-E record I bought. That's $1.
Awesome.
And now you go to the record store and it's not $1.
No.
Oh yeah, records have gone up so much in price, and it's crazy. So my probably my greatest score story, although I have many, would be and I know Ray has many too,
Yes.
but would be while I was working at Aaron's, this woman came through with a giant. People used to come in with trades, right? They would want to just sell their records for cash. This was at the time when CDs started to become really popular, and Napster and all this stuff. So people were just getting rid of their vinyl like crazy. And this woman came in, and her husband had been like worked at Capitol Records for many, many years, and he had passed away. She brought a U-Haul full to Aaron's, and we bought it all. It was all amazing stuff. And when she was leaving, I asked her, hey, is there any more? You know, like, do you have more? She's like, oh, yeah, there's tons more. It's just in my nasty, dirty basement. Like, I couldn't get
ding,
to
ding,
it.
ding, I'll go there.
And I was like, against company policy with the store, I like took her number and then called her like the next day. And I drove down to like South Central where it was. And she's like, go ahead. So I went down into her basement, and like your story a bit, it was rat poo, and she had a bunch of dogs, so she would just let the dogs like use the bathroom down there. So I was down there like on my knees digging through like kind of moldy boxes with like dog pee seeping into my pants and stuff, and wishing I had a mask, like,
and gloves,
fumes and gloves. But I'm sitting there, and there's like all these sealed Blue Notes, Impulse, all these rare, jazz records that are still sealed, like promo punched with a hole in it, or cut corners, just like radio things that the guy like probably had been sent multiple copies of, and they just were stored down there. And I walked out of there with maybe, I don't know, 2 boxes of these records. And I remember, I regret it now because I probably sold most of them on eBay at the time just to survive, because we weren't getting paid a lot to work at a record store. But yeah, that was probably one of my most epic scores.
Cool. All right, we're going to move into part 1. Thank you for sharing those awesome stories. Yeah. In part 1 of each episode, we discuss the art of record collecting through various topics. In this final episode 3, we are showing the love to album art. That, admiring the album, putting it on, listening to it from start to finish, looking through the album art, if it opens up, taking the sleeve out, reading the lyrics. Some people may argue this is a dying art form unless you catch the bug and you love records, because now it's like a little tiny JPEG floating in your streaming service. I mean, younger kids don't even understand that unless you catch the bug. So my first question to y'all is, why do you think album art is important? Maybe not so much back then, but like now, why go through the effort of taking the time to notice it?
Well, for me, as an art lover myself, just art in general, and having studied art, I think there's multiple reasons. The first reason is, like, as an artist, you want to try to, because I'm a musical artist myself and I release music, so you want to try to somehow represent your feelings about the music in the artwork somehow. You want somehow the artwork to relate to the music for you, even if everyone else looks at it and goes, this looks nothing like what I hear on the music. Like, if it relates for you, then you feel like you've connected a piece of art to your music, and that's a very kind of it makes you feel like the puzzle is complete in your release, right? Secondly, back to just album jackets and stuff. When I was young, in my teens and 20s, like collecting records, you can learn so much just by looking at the back of the sleeve, seeing the different musicians that played. Oh, this guy, he played on that record too. And it was produced by this guy. Oh, I keep seeing his name around. He produces all these other records that I like. Things like this, like, are huge ways to learn. So then the next time you're, let's say, at the record store and you find a record that you don't know and you're like, oh, James Gadsden's on drums, Ron Carter's on bass. This is probably going to be good because I know these two guys from all these other records. That's so interesting
because I actually find it really hard to find that information now. Like if
it's
I look
next
at
to impossible.
If I look at a new release, I don't see who's on the record playing. That is a kind of a loss, especially I guess for session players and producers and writers and.
Totally.
Who's looking at that unless you're like Wikipedia?
Well, yeah. If you go on Spotify or Apple and you pull up additional info for the song, it'll only show you usually the composer and the artist. It does not show you the session players. It does not. It's oftentimes it's like you wish there was more to read. And also jazz records, for instance, usually the liner notes on the jazz records. These guys, they would have like really smart writers who would sit there and first do a short biography on each musician that played on the record. And then they would go through and describe each song on the record. Like, this is a standard, but these guys took this standard and took it to a new level by adding this instrumentation and changing the breakdown to be in 3/4 or whatever. Like, there was so much description, so you could actually read the back of a record before you even bought it and kind of have an idea of what you might be getting.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely with album art, it's the visual. It's the first thing that captures your attention. So if you see my family, they know, I've been collecting records for a long time. They thrift or they out and about and they always ask me, what records do we buy? Like, what are cool records? And they've tried in the past to acquire records for me, but usually they're, vocal or stuff. And I tell them like, if there's like a dude with like an afro on it or a guy like who looks like he took acid or funky colors on it, usually those are the cool ones.
Grab it. I was going to say, that was my next question is, have you ever just bought a record just because it looks cool, not even knowing what's on there?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. That's
1,000%.
Especially, if they're fairly priced. Yeah, that's the way to go. But yeah, it just jumps at you, when you see an album cover like Funkadelic Maggot Brain, you see this afro in the dirt, or you see King Crimson in the Court of King Crimson, this crazy psychedelic scary face. Those are the things that you wonder what the music sounds like.
I would say, like, unless you're out there doing that, you're missing out because you're just streaming. You're letting the algorithm tell you what to hear. You're not getting a visual, which is interesting. But again, go buy some records. Get into the record store. All right. Tom,
please go to the record store.
Go to the record store.
Honestly,
go to the thrift bin.
I know you want to move forward, but I just want to add, like, to anyone who's listening or watching, that there is something so incredibly fulfilling about going into a record store and not knowing what you're looking for and discovering something new based on maybe the album art, maybe suggestion from someone who's working there, maybe just you get pulled in one direction and you pull a record and you're like, well, this looks interesting. Oh, this is music from Ghana or whatever. Like,
and it's $1, so I'll take it.
I mean, it's unlikely to be $1 these days, but still, you can learn so much. I feel like one thing that is really difficult with streaming music these days is it's much harder to sort of discover new music if you don't know what to look for, and whereas like in a record store, I remember as a kid just like we talking about the covers, just looking at some of these covers and being like, whoa, this looks crazy. What is this? I'm going to buy it because like the cover is so sick. I'm just going to grab this and it's got to be something cool. And most of the time it was. I mean, you strike out and hit some duds, but hey.
I'd say, speaking of cool album covers, I have some of your records, or two of them. Nice. You're going to get a little vinyl ASMR as we do this for anyone that's listening. Tom, a.k.a. Sweatson Klank, produces amazing music. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And also, you try to put a lot of stuff on record, on vinyl.
Yeah.
And so why is it important for you to go through this process? I mean, these album covers, and most of your album covers are amazing, and you tend to like sign them. Like this one says 74 of 100 and you signed it. Some of them aren't elaborate. I see sometimes you just do like not wood. You do like almost like paper and then stamps and cool different, you really put your touch to it. So why do you think it's important to go through this process in a day where you're really just doing this for people that love records?
Yeah. Well, one, since I love records and I love more than anything finding records that, let's say, are hand numbered or signed. Yeah. You just know that they're going to be, there's a lot of care put into them, and they're what we call small private presses. So I love private press records when it's like the artist went and pressed it themselves and went through all the work. And let me tell you, it's a nightmare to press a record. There's so many things that can go wrong. It's very expensive. So cool. You're not guaranteed to sell them all. It's a hefty process, and trust me, like, I don't make money on them. It's just for the love. It's for the love of vinyl and to give back to music lovers who love vinyl, but mostly it's also about, for me, it doesn't feel like a full real release until there's something physical, right? Like something physical. That. And years down the line, the internet is filled with trillions and trillions of terabytes of just information. But these things, they don't go away.
Right.
They stay forever. If you care for them, they will last forever. You can pass them to your kids, who will pass them to their kids, who will pass them to their kids. And they're like time capsules, stamps of like a moment in time. So for me, capturing that moment in time when I made that music and having it just be like, boop, stamped on a record, it's there, it's captured, then I can artistically move on. And later on, I can go revisit it or whatever, but it's very important for me. And it's expensive and a hassle of a process.
Do you work with an artist, or do you do these yourself?
Most of them I do myself. A lot of them I do. My mom so we can talk about my mom.
I know, we had a little connection there.
Yeah, so my mom, speaking of album art, my mom worked at Columbia and CBS Records in the 80s and 90s in the art department, doing album covers for some of the biggest records you've ever seen. Like, we had plaques in our house from Michael Jackson, Sade, Electric Light Orchestra. And the funny thing, there's another connection between here is that Brandy Flowers, who is the founder of Hit and Run, who we were just talking about, also worked in the art department with my mom at Sony and Columbia. Yeah. So, and just, I know we got to move quick on time, but let me tell you about the process back then. Like, when I was a kid after school, my mom would work till 6 or 7 p.m. So I would take the bus and go to Columbia, and she'd just be like, hang out here, go into the record room, and like, you can grab any records or cassettes that you want. And so I would just like go through and be like, wow, Ozzy Osbourne, like, this is cool, stuff like that. Sade, awesome. Music I didn't know. But back then, there was no computers.
Yeah.
The jackets were not made with computers. They had these giant drafting tables, and they would, the bands would go and have photo shoots, and they would print out big photo prints, and then my mom and all the graphic designers there would literally they would do, like, with X-Acto knives, like, cut the band out of the photo and then place it on another background and glue it down. All the liner notes and the thank yous they would do on typewriters and things like this, and then print those sheets and separate all the words, and like, essentially like a collage, right? And then that final sort of master jacket, once it was approved by the band and the management, would get scanned and printed, actually hard prints on these jackets, right? So the process was like, and my mom was there all throughout the time when it changed from that process to digital.
Wow.
And computers became implemented. So she was early on the train of learning how to use early Photoshop and things like that to make artwork for these album jackets. And I can tell you a very interesting story, and then I'll stop because I can talk forever about this. Sorry, but the bins at record stores, they were, you'd walk in and the records were like this, right?
Yeah.
Well, when CDs first came out and started replacing records, we know that a CD is about a quarter of a record, right, in size. Well, the graphic designers and the artists who worked in the industry were so bummed out and so mad that their canvas shrunk into a quarter, that basically the record labels thought, all right, so we're going to make the CDs half a vinyl. And so you'd have these, what we called, what were they called?
Long box.
Long boxes, exactly, long boxes. So they'd have like a half of a vinyl's worth of cardboard to do the artwork, and the CD would be either in the bottom or the top, and you'd rip it open and throw it away. But in the bins, but at least in the bins, you could fit two of them in the same
and
bins.
They would stick out.
They would stick out.
That's so funny you brought that up, because I would be like, this is so cool. I would just take the box and pin it on my wall.
That's right.
Back in high school, before I started really collecting records, I thought that the box was cool because I was used to seeing records.
Yeah.
And I thought that's interesting. I never really thought of that way, though.
Yeah, and then, people started stealing them, so they got these plastic, what were they called, Ray? The plastic.
The plastic went around it.
They wrapped around it, and you had to unlock it and when a customer came to the counter with a stack of CDs, they were long and in these plastic things, and you unlock the thing and take out the box for them.
Oh my God, CDs.
Yeah, it's I believe CDs are going to come back, to
you
be
think
honest.
so?
Yes,
I think so too.
Definitely.
Dude, do you know how many mixtapes I made on CDs? I look back and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was like, my court. Okay, anyways. That was you took me back. Okay. Ray, I have a question for you about the record store when you set it up. Do you set it up so that it's visually appealing because album art, I mean, now we're talking about this artistic form. The way that you described these old records were made, it's like proper, beautiful collaging and art. I mean, new stuff too, digital, you can be very creative. So like, do you set your space up for people visually?
Yeah, definitely. We have a long wall that's our display wall where we put most of our cool looking records or kind of records that we think will catch people's eye or artists that are kind of do well and people kind of seek after. So yeah, we got this large wall and we try to put the most colorful, the best art, or just things that might grab people's attention.
Yeah, I can see. And then you get to change it every week.
It's like we change it every week, every few days, or sometimes we play little themes within the wall for ourselves and hope other people notice.
Nice.
Yeah, and, kind of artists now are influenced by artists from the past or art from the past. So sometimes there'll be an artist.
There's like an homage.
Yeah,
well, like
exactly.
the Redman album with the Funkadelic album that you were talking about.
DJ Shadow has one that referenced like what is that? CTI or A&M record.
Right.
There was like Fred Astaire was influenced by some reggae album cover, and we had them both at the same time. And some guy bought the reggae one. I was like, hold on a second.
Do you want to see this?
Yeah. And I combined them both, and yeah, it was a real cool moment. So yeah.
Did he get them both?
He did not get them both, but I was like,
I would have been sold.
Yeah, I know.
I'd be like, this is cool.
Yeah, I was like, before you leave, hold on. And I had to take a picture of both because I didn't even notice until the moment he bought that one. But yeah, definitely we try to make it appealing to the eye with artwork or colors or,
I guess the modern day version of that, which is always changing on the internet, but now it's like when you're streaming, you can put like little moving videos, the reels or whatever, onto Spotify or I mean, I guess that's. But the thing is you can't keep that. So in 5 years from now, when it's not streaming, it's something else. Like those like visuals. Do you ever do that for your releases?
Oh, yeah.
Like with
canvases,
the visuals, the canvases.
But
thank you.
You know what? Like, to be honest with you, I feel like the canvases,
and they look really cool.
Yeah.
But then
it's short-lived. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm starting to. At first, I thought, okay, this is cool, but now I kind of really prefer just like the artwork of the album.
Yeah.
And I will just add, like, to Ray's store and his display across the store, like, that's part of the, like, excitement you get when you walk into a record store,
Yes.
in any record store, because most record stores will do this. They will have a wall where they're displaying the things that they're either the proudest of or they know are going to sell or that are hot or whatever it is.
Or a theme. I like
or a
themes.
theme. And like you walk in, the first thing you normally do is you look at the wall, right? That's just how it goes. As a record lover and digger, you look at the wall and you're like, oh man, wow. And I remember still, like as a kid, walking into record stores, looking at the wall, and you know, a lot of times the ones on the wall are the most expensive too.
Yes.
So you're like,
I need
one,
that.
one day I'll be able to drop $200 on that one. Whoa.
Dang. I would say before we move on to part 2 that in just relating it to Chicago, they had a very strong brand. A very strong album art cover that, I mean, you could lay all of the Chicago records next to each other and there's like a story there. I mean, even now, even though they still release stuff, they still use that same brand logo icon. I should have looked up the history about it. So like put it in the comments, because I'm sure all the Chicago fans are going to tell their stories. But they're just really cool. There's the chocolate
font.
cover, the font.
I mean, who did the font is what I want to know.
Someone let us know.
Yeah.
I should know these things. I didn't even
That's
think
all
about
right.
that.
It's all
but
right. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah, because the focus is really Terry's Hall, which is part 2. So let's get into part 2. Cool. This is Terry's Hall. In part 2 of every episode, we review a portion of Terry's record collection and evaluate how these sounds may have influenced him. Before we get into it, just to let you know, there's a playlist with this record collection in it. I try to put a couple songs from each album. Just go listen to it and then maybe discover the album yourself. Listen to it from start to finish. Listen to it before, listen to it while we're talking. We're going to quickly, this is like show and tell. So we're going to just kind of go through the records, talk about some of the songs. But if you want to hear them, go to terrykath.com. Follow the link for the podcast page, and that will link you to Spotify or Apple Music. All right, so this is the jazz fusion section. When I was listening to music in this collection, I feel that Chicago's kind of they kind of got lumped in with jazz fusion. Let's say this is 70s jazz fusion, because I feel like maybe in this day and age, jazz fusion might be different. A lot of this collection is long form, very experimental, 7 to 10 minute songs with a drum solo or a saxophone solo, really like moody and vibey, where Chicago's version of jazz rock fusion fit more the pop mold. Shorter songs, ballads, and then as they got more popular, you know, the pressure to really fit that, which as many of the Terry Kath fans know, was hard for my dad. So I think it's interesting to like go through this collection, because this is what he would have been listening to in the 70s while he was touring with Chicago and maybe potentially dreaming about what his solo album would be. I would also say that I started as a hip hop collector.
Same.
When I was 18, I got turntables and I was like, I just want to DJ hip hop. Spent my 20s DJing in clubs, going to the record stores looking for what I was going to play that weekend. So when I actually sat down and listened to this collection, it was pretty awesome, because there's a lot of hip hop samples in them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're kind of the same age-ish, all of us here. So if we all grew up in LA.
Yes.
Yep.
So there was an era of getting mixtapes at the vintage clothing stores, and that was like where I discovered sampled music. 'Cause there would be like, I wish I could remember the name of all the DJs that did it, but it would be like, oh, his record collection, and then he would make these jazz everyone's like, this is elevator music, Michelle. And I was like, no, so-and-so sampled this, you know? And so it was like, if you were into hip hop, you were usually into this and collecting it.
The breaks, or rare groove as they called it back then.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to just like pull them out by sections of the artists, and then we'll kind of go through that. So first, because this is the big reveal for a lot of people, we're going to talk about the weather report. Because the weather report not only has these like cool covers, I'm just going to like hand them to you to look at. I mean, the album covers are really cool. like you say, you get a breakdown of everything. And my mom really told me, like, this is what he listened to a lot. She specifically remembers that in her house, like, he would just put this on from start to finish. And like, look, you even have the promo not for sale sticker on there. Which makes you wonder if he went out and bought it or he discovered it because someone gave it to him.
Oh, I'm sure people were gifting this to him.
Yeah.
For sure.
We have one more.
That's actually
Santana.
Oh, that's the Santana. Never mind. That's from a different show. See, you guys recognize the album art.
Yeah.
Of course.
To me, I don't know. You guys like familiar with the Weather Report in general?
Oh yeah, definitely. They're one of the most influential jazz groups and fusion groups in general. Joe Zawinul, Wayne Shorter,
Airto.
Yeah, Jaco Pastorius on the early records.
I mean, you've got musicians who went on to have incredible solo careers as well. Dom Umrumano's on this one. Brazilian. So
this is
and Airto
Sweet
played
Nighter
on
we're talking about.
Airto played on a bunch of them, but this one's also Don Umrumano.
Yeah, we got Airto right here.
There's Airto, yeah. So Joe Zawinul is maybe one of the most influential and yet kind of low key, like his name never really was associated with like big commercial success. But one of the most incredible keyboard players and band leaders and composers and arrangers. And he also has a solo career with some pretty out there cool records. Jaco Pastorius, bassist, who was known for just like some of the most technical, outlandish bass playing that
I mean, because there's like some wild. I remember when I first put this on, my mom was like, "Oh, he loved the Weather Report." And you know, when I was like 18, I put this on. I was like, "This is, I don't know if I can listen to this." You know, it was a lot because like some of them are so long, and at the time I was really into hip hop, and I was like, "Oh, this is." But I re-listen to all of these now. You know, pulling the records out, glass of wine, put the records on, listen to them, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is really, really good." And I can see how my dad probably smoked a little weed and then like put this on in the house, and you just vibe out because they're if you put them on from start to finish, it's really a whole vibe.
Yeah,
these records.
Yeah, this one in particular is maybe one of my favorites. It's really like at this point in the career of Weather Report is when they kind of I believe Joe decided to like, hey, we need to tame the like extreme improvisation down just a bit and focus a little bit more on the groove. And so this one actually has some really nice kind of just grooves in it. And yes, Weather Report has also been sampled by a lot of hip hop people. And these artworks are incredible.
I mean, this one I always wanted to go to because which one is that again?
I Sing the Body Electric.
I Sing the Body Electric. The cover is so cool that I always pulled that one out to listen to because I don't even know if he's like a spaceman or what he is on the cover there. And these records in this haul comes out from, they're like 1972 to 1977. So for my dad, I would think he was in it thick with Chicago. And this was like a aha moment probably for him where he was like, oh, I could make music like this. I don't have to be playing these like ballads over and over, which it's funny because the ballads, Chicago ballads, are what they're most famous for. But if you listen to the ballads, like what got the Grammys and things like that, there's no real guitar in it anymore. There's no real open format jazz anymore. And live, they were telling them to cut down their solos. And so it was like a whole battle. And I could see how this was like a release for him to just be like, they get to breathe in these. I can't even imagine what Weather Report was like to see live.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like the second side of this record is recorded in Japan.
Oof.
In a standing room only concert performance, January 13th, 1972 in Shibuya. So that must have been I'm sure people were like losing their minds.
Oh, did you get all that information off the back of the jacket?
Off the back of the jacket. I mean, there you go. I learn something new every time I pull a jacket. I swear. I'm just like, oh, that name? That guy played bass?
Right.
It's this is stuff you don't get. Like if you discover something on Spotify, like, and I'm like, oh, I really like this, then I go Google.
Wikipedia,
and
maybe it's there.
If it's underground stuff, it's usually not on Wikipedia. You got to go Google, then you go to the
trust
Instagram.
That whoever wrote it in Wikipedia is right.
I mean, it's really hard to just. These jackets are so cool.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next section. The Crusaders, or the Jazz Crusaders, as they were once known. These albums. This is my favorite album cover. It's so
very
funny.
Cool cover.
Let's see, which one do you want? The pink one?
Yeah. Actually, I do like this album cover a lot. You know, the pink jumps out at you.
I will say that these records, well, first of all, they've been sampled by so many people. This was my favorite. Like, I played these ones a lot when I discovered them. I even put like little dots on them next to the ones I wanted to play out so I could remember which ones were the good songs that I wanted to play. And normally these are all in plastic. We took them out because they were my dad, so I put them in plastic. We took them out so they wouldn't make so much noise during the podcast. But these albums were sampled by Jay Dilla, Queen Latifah, Chemical Brothers, Beastie Boys, Mac Miller, just to name a few.
I sampled that one.
You what?
I sampled that one.
And Sweatson Klank. But again, the Jazz Crusaders, you just got to go listen to them. They're amazing.
All these guys too were big session musicians too.
I mean, these guys all went on to have incredible careers.
Yeah.
Like Joe Sample went on to have a huge career. Wayne Henderson, played with almost everybody. Wilton Felder. These guys were legends. Sticks Hooper drums. Like,
this one's
come on.
too,
these guys were top musicians.
Yeah, this one's recorded at the Roxy, so this is some Los
that
Angeles
one's the live
history.
one?
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
These guys were playing on everybody's albums. If you open, Stevie Wonder's album credits, you'll see Joe Sample or, Sticks Hooper on various albums. So these guys were friends with everybody. War, Wilton Felder
That's right.
was, a staple in War's band. So, yeah, these guys all knew each other, and they kind of knew what was going on in the music scene.
This one has a Diggable Planet sample on it.
Yeah, Crusaders were an LA-based group, I believe, right? Yeah, they were very LA, kind of playing all over. You even got Larry Carlton on guitar on this one, which I'm sure your dad probably...
I mean, speaking of Joe Sample, there is one Joe Sample in this
Yeah,
collection.
that's a good one.
And it's interesting because this record came out... broken. See, they're usually in there. It's sliding out. This one came out in 1978. So it's like, that's the year my father passed away. So it's like a question of whether he got to listen to this one. Hopefully he did. Yeah. Produced by the Crusaders.
We got a Tupac sample on that one.
Yes. Wait, this one, oh my gosh, honestly, in my wildest dreams is very important Tupac sample, Dear Mama. I also have like my little dots on this because I would take them out and play like when I used to DJ like lounges or whatever. Or even my opening sets back in the day, it would just be like this.
Mean, that is a great record. It's very easy to find to, and it is just such a fantastic
and
album.
It's not,
Crusaders records.
I would say that the cool thing about these records is they're not promos. Like the Weather Report was promos. A lot of these are promos. So like the idea that he actually went out and got these records.
Yeah. These were on a cool label too.
Oh, look, the inside of which one are we looking at there?
Unsung Heroes.
Yeah. Which is I'll describe it a little bit for anyone who's listening. It's just them on a billboard at the side of the road, but then as you open up the record, you get different aspects.
All their friends.
You get different aspects of the billboard. Repeat it over and over.
It's so cool.
Genius. Okay. We're going to move on in our show and tell to more of some of my favorite sections of this. I mean, this is all good. I shouldn't say my favorite. They're all great.
They're all really great albums, and you could probably find them at your local record store, no problem.
That's right.
I mean, if you have to stream it, you have to stream it.
Oh yeah, even easier.
Get some records.
Okay. George Benson.
Oh, yes.
Wait, for a moment, we needed to talk about the Shape of Things to Come album, which came out in 1969, but looks like it came out in the 80s. Like, what?
You mean the artwork?
Yes. The artwork looks like straight out of the 80s. It's such a dope album.
It is. I can talk about this record. It is such a great. It's such a great record, and it's produced by a guy named Don Sebesky, and arranged by Don Sebesky, and Don Sebesky has played with and arranged many records, but it's also on a label called CTI, which was later purchased by A&M Records. But CTI was started by a guy named Creed Taylor, who's a producer who has produced so many incredible records. He's also known for sort of bringing a lot of, in the 60s, bringing a lot of Brazilian music to American and Western audiences. He brought over like Astrud Gilberto,
Diodato,
Airto, who else? Jobim stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so, and these records, CTI, like as young hip hop kids who were looking for samples, whenever you saw that, you'd just be like,
I'm getting it.
I know there's something on there. I'm getting it. Always. You see CTI, and they all had, similar to how Blue Note and Impulse had a look and had their whole thing, CTI. All the jackets on CTI, they always had this design. Their graphic designer was so on point, and most of them are gatefolds, and you've got these beautiful liner notes.
There he is.
Yeah. I mean,
he's a beautiful man. Well, I would say about these records, I mean, that one's 1969, so if he had it, who knows when he actually bought these, but this is jazz with a guitar lead on the jazz. So my dad being a guitar player, I feel like if I imagine what a lot of times the fans and everyone likes to imagine what this solo album would be that he was planning to put out after it, unfortunately, he passed away and never got to put it out. But I like to think that George Benson is almost there. I don't know how much, even though my dad did write, there is a moment, I can hear it here. Like I can almost hear like the guitar lead, the jazz, the freeform guitar. Great album. These are all phenomenal pieces of work.
There's a part in the documentary about your dad where his friend or who I forget who it was, but says that they used to put on George Benson records and your dad would play along. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah. So clearly,
because this is 1969, which is when the first Chicago record came out. Yeah. And I also just like to point out that like we're just looking at vinyl, but there was parts were missing in the story, like the tapes, the reel-to-reels, the DATs that he probably also listened to. I say they because it's like him and my mom, and in their home, there's other elements.
Of course.
That we're probably missing.
Everyone had a reel-to-reel back then.
Okay, we're going to move on to a really cool, oh my God, I'm so excited about.
Oh, yeah.
The LA Express. I mean, Tomcat, this was another, like, for me, when I came across these, or again, promotion, not for sale. Dude, Tomcat and the LA Express, come on. I want to hear what you guys want. That's the one. Wait, hold up the vinyl. I mean, she's so cute. This cute little girl with her.
She got the back.
It's so good.
The buckle is embossed.
Yeah, so if you look at the front of that, Michelle, like just embossing it like that, you see how the belt buckle sticks out and you can feel the texture? Like if you wanted to do that today, like
It'd be so
when
much
you're
money.
pressing a record, they'll be like, extra $3,000.
Wow.
It's crazy. Back then, they actually, the pressing records one was way cheaper and they had full printing presses that were capable of doing all this stuff. Unfortunately, all that stuff has left the United States, and printing presses for the most part, apart from some new ones that are popping up now, we're ran out of business. There's a sample on that one. that has also been used by
It's
many people.
The most epic.
Great drum beat, like
Footin' It. Well, no, sorry. That was the
Sneakin'.
George Benson one. This one, yeah. This one, so I wrote this down. Sneaking in the back. For me, the sample for me, that because it gets me every time, is the Massive Attack song that sampled it.
okay, yeah. I mean, it's
But-
one of the most used drum samples.
Well, my notes from, because what I did when I sat down to look at these, I would go to whosampledit.com. And because they just list it real quick
Yeah,
for you.
great resource.
These albums have over 300 samples on them that have been sampled. That one song, Sneaking in the Back, which is the Mass Attack, has also been sampled by Snoop Dogg, Wu-Tang, NWA, Eminem, Salt and Pepper, Chemical Brothers, The Far Side. It went for 17 pages of who sampled that one song on that one album, which is self-titled, Tomcat and the LA Express.
Now, there's another Tom Scott record that's also
I'm saying Tomcat, Tom Scott. Thank
harder
you.
to find and
The
very
album's
rare.
called Tomcat.
Yeah, Tomcat.
Tomcat,
There you
which
go.
is that one. No.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
this
one?
one.
Yeah, that one. Tomcat. That's why I keep saying Tomcat. Tom Scott in the LA Express.
Tom Scott got paid off of his samples.
Yeah.
You know?
Nice.
I mean, he's been sampled a lot.
Yeah, he's also like a big session musician too, same as the Crusaders.
Yep.
This guy played on everybody's album too.
Yep.
This one is a Caribou. These two are Caribou records, by the way. Caribou Ranch, if you don't know what it is, I will just give you a quick breakdown. Caribou Ranch was a place that Chicago producer Jimmy Gershio owned in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, and he had a recording studio there, and a lot of these artists would go live there while they recorded these albums.
I did not know.
Yeah. See, you didn't finish my documentary, bro. Just kidding. You didn't get far enough in.
Yeah.
That's people's favorite part of the documentary. Usually, that's if you can also watch my documentary if you want to know more. Caribou Ranch. Yeah, so he set up this like oasis for people to record in the middle of nowhere. You'd stay in a cabin, you'd record the album from start to finish. Then he went and started Caribou Records because he was trying to put these albums out, produce them and then put them out himself. So, I mean, almost all of Chicago's records were recorded there at that time in the 70s. Obviously, like Earth, Wind, and Fire recorded there, and it's endless, the roster that got to record there. But I think it's like, to me, a full circle moment is that these came out on Caribou Records, and that's how my dad ended up with these albums, or those two, or this one and that one.
I wonder if your dad ever crossed paths with any of these guys.
Very likely.
Yeah.
Very
I would
likely.
think so for sure.
Yeah.
Like, this is 75.
Yeah,
so-
which in that's Chicago was recording there at the same time. I mean, obviously they couldn't record at the same time because there was only one studio, but the property was huge and there was a ton of cabins, and there was one cabin in particular that was just my dad's cabin, and no one was allowed to stay there because he loved it.
Nice.
He loved it so much. Okay. Moving on to this
Yes.
James Vincent, which are, well, one of them, this one's a Caribou Records album. But when I listen to these James Vincent albums, I mean, a lot of this is very in line with Chicago, but I feel like, especially this being on Caribou, I feel like there was a genre maybe he was trying to put out off of the success that was Chicago. So he was like, let me get these other people up to Caribou and maybe try to keep it living, you know? And I can really hear it in this particular album, Space Traveler, because it's like very rock jazz with vocals.
He has a biography,
Check this one out.
and I started just kind of flipping through it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, I didn't know too much about James Vincent. Turns out he's from Chicago.
No way. Okay.
Makes sense.
And secondly, guess what? He was offered a part in Chicago with $1 million a year salary guaranteed, and he
What?
turned it down because they wanted him to work on the Sabbath, and he was a very, very religious guy. And further on in the biography, it talks about how he like had a lot of missed opportunities because he was super religious and refused to do a lot of different things. It's a really interesting story. So I believe like he actually auditioned for Chicago.
So for what part? Do you remember?
For, I believe, some sort of guitar background playing, something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would that have been after my dad passed?
It's possible that it's after your dad passed. What year are these records?
I mean, this one is 76.
Yeah, 74 on this one.
Yeah, so it could have been afterwards.
And this one's the Caribou one, so he would have been around Caribou Ranch when my dad passed.
I went and listened to that one, and it's actually quite good.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, and it's not one that you don't see that one often.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think.
Yeah,
I've
what are
seen
you
it before
thinking? You
this.
just opened up the record and had a look. Ray is looking at Culmination.
Yeah, definitely the front of the album drew me in. A guy sleeping in a kind of desert cloud or something, and then I looked on the back and I was like, "Oh, this is like what Joe Zawinul would wear,"
Yeah, totally. The artwork looks like, and I could be wrong. I'd love to see the record, but it looks like it's by a French-Belgium artist named Michelle Kath.
Excuse me knowing about the artist.
But I could be totally wrong. It could just be like a style.
That's one thing they don't often put the artist's name, do they? Because
they do. You just got to look at the fine print.
The fine print.
But it is not. It is not.
Got them glasses on to see that fine print.
But it's a pretty like unique record, I gotta say. Like of all the records in here, when I looked at the list, this was the one where I was like, I've never seen this before, and I went and I wanted to do a little research and find out more about it. And it's the guy, I believe at this time he was playing with all of those kind of people, weather report type of people, and then he had like a religious come to God moment and changed his ways and became very he changed his life, stopped drugs, drinking, and became very extremely religious.
It's interesting, that little tidbit of information and the idea that like if he was auditioning to replace my dad in the next album, because like when my dad passed, they were like, no, we have to keep like they released an album a year later, and that album they released a year later has the Street Players on it, which is like such a different sound. But I feel like if he was going to join in this world where we're making this up, that this is what it is, it might have been a very different path for Chicago, because Street Player and that album that came out, they were trying to do disco rock. Yeah. And at the time, I don't think it landed, but Street Player obviously is very popular.
I think Street Player was a hit when it came out. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I just remember like listening to that album and just being like, that's so annoying for me, from my perspective.
I
and
could imagine.
But obviously, as a DJ, Street Player is like a very important track. All right, I'm just going to talk about one more record here, which is Bob James. This one-on-one record, which I couldn't find it. I forgot to bring it with me, but what I will say is this Bob James, we're going to end with Bob James. There's a lot of other like one little things here and there records that are in this collection that I've just added to the playlist, but we won't talk about them at the moment just for time's sake. But I do want to end with Bob James because he is also another really important kind of like digging in the crates artist. And this one-on-one record, which has Nautilus on it, which is a very important piece of work. I mean, it was a song I knew in high school because I was friends with producers. Yeah. And everyone wanted to sample Nautilus, and it's a beautiful track. And because of that, finding that vinyl in my dad's record collection and being like, oh my God, he made this song. I like went and bought all. I went hunting for Bob James. None of these are my dad's, but I would say because of that record in my dad's collection, I went and bought all these Bob James albums.
So your dad only had the Bob James one?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't have it here with us to look at visually, but I'll show you some of these other Bob James records. You can see I bought them $279. Yeah. I paid for that one. I was literally buying these for the album art, for sure. not knowing what was on them?
You know, those records are fantastic records. Like Bob James's music, he is also one of the top piano
Just the
player,
vocal.
composers, arrangers. He's a legend, Bob James, like an absolute legend. And some people say, you know, oh, his later work is cheesy or whatever, but there's always something good on there.
There's always, well, yeah, and again, sampled many, many, many times.
Yeah, definitely. His album artwork always kind of has a theme. He was on the CTI label, and then his
there
own
you go,
label, Tap on
CTI
Z.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely Bob James 1 is a CTI recording. But yeah, you know, it's the theme of these labels, kind of like how Chicago had a theme. It's like when you see it, you know it's a Chicago record. When you see it, you know it's a CTI record. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of albums, artists, and labels that had themes that you know, maybe the font connected.
Well,
you know?
then if you collect the record, you
Yeah.
have like this collection of art
Totally.
that they
Chicago,
brought you into.
Funkadelic all use the same font on every record, you know. So it's real cool to see these albums and this artwork and connect it all together.
Cool. Well, thank you. Well, this wraps it up for episode 3. Thank you for being on the journey. This is also the final episode, so I hope we discovered a little bit about my dad's, you know, what he was listening to, what his collection was, where he was at. Please visit terrykath.com for more information about the documentary, playlists, merch, and just to get deeper into his world. Thank you, Tom and Ray. Can
So
you
welcome.
share
thank you.
where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. My artist name is Sweatson Klank, so SWEATSON KLANK, and you can find me wherever you stream your music, also on Instagram, YouTube, all that. Just type me in and you'll find me. But if you want to listen to the music, head to Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, whatever that is.
Yeah, and you could find me at High Fidelity LA on Instagram, or you could come visit our record shop,
visit the shop.
in the West Adams neighborhood. And if you're not in Los Angeles, we got an online shop you could visit too.
Oh, nice. You
Yeah.
ship the
We
records
ship
out?
worldwide, yeah. And it's sort of a collection of all album art. And
What's the website?
It's highfidelityla.com.
Nice.
Yeah, and we got thousands of albums, and you could browse, and it's sort of like being in a record store if you can't make it out to the physical record store.
The modern way of shopping.
It's a
Yeah.
great shop if you can make it there, though.
I also wanted to share a documentary called Squaring the Circle, the story of hypnosis, which is
Yeah.
about the guys that made some of the most iconic albums ever. They did Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. It's a really good documentary if you want to see like what you were talking about, how they layered and collaged. It's actually mind-blowing, but also
Yeah.
very good touch on album art. I also encourage you to get out to a record store or a council shop or your parents' or family's little collection and just pick out a record you don't know and just listen to it because you like the album art.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And that's
Definitely.
it. Thanks for tuning in.
Ooh, ah, feel the bass.